think probably the worst grievance I have with modern culture and living today is the over sexualization and the realization of sexuality in your life. This isn't to say figuring out sexuality, but the fact that everything revolves around it. There is a great sense of promiscuity and a culture of sexual promiscuity, and kind of like porno-brained uh, thought above all. And when you take up the position that this is harmful, you think of it as a virus of sorts, an STD within itself. Um, it is a constant transmission of values that you don't agree with, and I think are just like wrong to have. One of the worst byproducts of this is the complete isolation of sexually uninteresting people, whether it be for their looks or their interests, or just because they don't like their genetics, they don't hold value in a over sexualized culture. It's very demoralizing to people who may just be considered plain or uninteresting in that regard. But this sort of freedom to oogle at and look at anyone in the whole wide world and see how, perfect, quote unquote, they are in regards to, people around you, it creates an artificial scarcity for relationships and connection with others. And this doesn't just lead to a scarcity in sexual partner, but any sort of relationship with someone, whether it be just through friends or normal interaction with people. If you are perceived as uninteresting, unattractive, and bland, chances are you won't have the best of luck when it comes to attracting people to you. It's in the word attract, like attractiveness, it's in the word. And I don't think there's any argument to be made that attractiveness is not the most important factor in making new friends. If you're perceived as incredibly ugly or even just basic, there's probably a higher chance that whatever you have to say, no matter if you are the nicest, sweetest person in the whole wide world, you will be just completely ignored because of your looks. But it seems that cultural institutions are obviously controlling how this is perceived and how sex is perceived and how people are perceived, to what end that uninteresting individuals are completely sidelined. It's it used to be commonly understood that this sort of meaningless sexual contact was entirely looked down upon, whether it be for religious reasons or cultural reasons. Just intercourse with someone else just for the sake of intercourse was not a good thing. Maybe in some ancient societies, it was not so tremendously terrible, but obviously those didn't really work out. The institutions that we have today that have been carried on for the longest are those sort of ideas, um, specifically in like Christian doctrine. There is a lot of clause against this sort of lust, um, and only in recent time has this developed that this idea of contact, of a sexual contact without reason, this spread of quote love has really exploded in popularity, through like new aged religions and the such. I find it harder and harder myself to even be attracted to someone. They have to be incredibly special, and the relationship I have to build with them, um, we have to connect on some deeper level, obviously, and you would think that would be pretty commonplace, but from what I've seen at least, and perhaps this is a vague understanding through my socially isolated lens, most women completely base their attraction to others on looks, and everything else comes second. And that makes sense considering that it's attraction, it's attractiveness. That's probably genetically, you're genetically inclined to want to gravitate towards that person, but it's very demoralizing. I really do think a lot of this, that what this sexually charged culture is teaching us though is wrong. There is no room for for discipline. There's no room for self-discipline. There is no room for improvement because you are just told to give in to your wants at any point in time. I don't want people to think that I'm saying this as someone completely unaffected by this. Obviously not. I'm a teenage male who grew up in the 2010s and and now living in the 2020s. This has probably been affecting me the most. This sort of culture that has been so obsessed with want and desire. It's something that should be one of the greatest struggles for any young man in their lives, to avoid that and go entirely against it at any point in time. And obviously I faltered in that. It's not something I'm proud of, but it's something that happens because just how much of it is pushed. It's to the point where things that would be considered culturally taboo have been being pushed. They have been pushed to such extent that where it becomes almost commonplace, at least in certain online discussion, that ideas, certain ideas that would get you laughed out the room are being considered. Something like pedophilia, which was often thought of as the ultimate taboo, something like that. And while I won't say that I don't believe it's going to be normalized anytime soon, but the idea of it now, it used to be some sort of ultimate taboo that was wrong in every sense of the word. The only people who were into that were unapologetically lustful and evil people, by any moral standard. No matter what you believed, they were unapologetically evil people. And while I try to avoid using moralistic arguments because they are reductive, but they were just evil. But now you see these conversations sparking around it, and it's concerning to say the least. I know I posit myself as someone against what is now modern culture, but using pedophilia as a tool to subvert it only shoots you in the foot, disregarding the lustful aspect of it and the fact that it's disgusting and wrong. If you were to use that concept of pedophilia as a way to subvert modern culture and say that this is some sort of freedom that culture does not provide. Because culture in itself is transmitted through desires and lust and oftentimes sexual values, and what a culture values sexually is the most important thing in that culture. To impose sexuality on a child when they are not ready to experience it is the fastest way to get them indoctrinated into culture. A child who has been forced to experience sexuality at such a young age, when they are absolutely not ready to and they have no idea what they are doing, is going to ruin them. And something like that, even if you yourself believe that it is some sort of subversion of culture, or you believe that, quote, pedophobia is odd or strange, you cannot be someone who wants to subvert culture and then believe that that is the way to do it, because in reality that is raising a new generation of people who will be the most susceptible to it. So it always struck me as odd, that argument being used, if you want to posit yourself as someone who wants to subvert what is accepted morally and righteously, because even then, what is being pushed by what is considered righteous forces, you know, large corporations or governmental forces, basically talking heads that people just believe is right, are pushing for more and more extreme sexuality. And it's only a matter of time before even the most horrible of taboos is going to experience a massive push to make it normal, and morally right. But I do really think that culture in itself is an STD, and that if something is not done to revert this change and to stop it in some way, shape, or form, it will only get worse. And the insane isolation of young men who no longer want to participate in the wider world, that population will only grow and grow, as it has done, because they are viewed as worthless in that regard. I never know how to end these, but I suppose I myself, try at least to not worry about it, because I know that I'm probably not that desirable a person, whether mostly through my own faults and what I've done to myself as a person, and through my own mind, but I'm not going to sit here and pity myself and say that that's some sort of cultural thing. I understand that that's mostly my fault, but from a reserved position of someone who doesn't want to participate in that, you see it in everything and everyone, and it disgusts you to no end.